Ark Raiders is a live service title, and as such, its successful launch on October 30th is only the starting shot for a long and sometimes exhausting, sometimes extremely demanding, and sometimes downright catastrophic journey. No matter how big the hype gets, how amazing the honeymoon phase feels, or how much the community buzzes, grinds and celebrates, the real success will only show after weeks, months, or even years. A live service game can sell incredibly well, but if players put it aside or even uninstall it disappointed after just a few hours, days, or weeks, it will still be seen as a failure. Another unsuccessful attempt to enter a fiercely competitive genre. There's little known about how long Embark Studios plans to keep feeding Ark Raiders with new content, what will keep the game appealing, and how it will convince us day by day, month by month, and year by year to hit that ready button one more time for the notorious last round. But just a few days ago, 3 of the minds behind Ark Raiders answered some burning questions and gave us a peek behind the curtain during TwitchCon. Host RDIRL led the panel featuring design director Virgil, art director Robert, and tech designer Nora, collecting your questions and receiving fascinating answers in return. I filtered and sorted the most interesting ones for you. So let's take a look together at what the devs focused on during Ark Raiders development and what Embark Studios' long-term plans for the game look like. Before we begin, I would really appreciate it if you showed the video some love and hit the thumbs up. If you want to stay in the loop on all things Ark Raiders before and long after the launch, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to never miss a video. Alright, let's jump right into the juicy TwitchCon questions and answers. I've added timestamps to every topic so you can easily skip to the parts you're most interested in. And stick around till the end for a great behind-the-scenes story from the devs. Before Ark Raiders could even exist in a playable form, the creative minds at Embark had to decide on its visual style and aesthetics. But how did a studio founded by developers who spent their entire careers on realistic boots-on-the-ground games like Battlefield end up creating a new title with an 80s-inspired, Star Wars-flavored sci-fi look?
Early on in the inception of the studio, we tried to figure out what kind of games we want to make. We had built up this desire to explore something else, something that goes beyond what we've done in the past. So we start with a very, very sort of grounded, believable approach to things, and then inject all these other sort of sci-fi-isms. It's all based around the idea of things that are plausible. You will understand what they are, because they are sort of intuitive in their approach. They are intuitive in their design. You can often discern what this will do based on what it looks like.
Yeah.
We were all really attached to the idea of making something that has a sort of, let's call it retro-futuristic approach to it.
Of course, this believable world wouldn't be complete without its inhabitants, or in this case, its occupiers. The Ark presented the developers with real challenges. It's all the more fascinating that the game, unlike most PvE titles, manages entirely without health bars or damage numbers.
It's actually so fun because we used to have health bars.
And damage numbers.
Yes, damage numbers, health bars, we had everything. And what we very quickly realized was that when we had health bars and damage numbers, people looked at health bars and damage numbers, and they did not look at the enemies. They did not look at the players. They didn't look at the rest of the VFX and the gradual destruction that we have that has really become a big thing on the enemies themselves. So yeah, we tried that out, and we were like, okay, this is making people just look at numbers. And we don't want them to do that. We want them to feel immersed in the game.
So that poses like a pretty bold mission statement, and it was a lot of back and forth in figuring this out. But when everything comes together, it really serves that purpose. Things do behave like you expect them to. They react the way you expect them to. You can clearly read it. And that's, I think, one of our biggest achievements, if I may be so.
You can see and feel the Ark's condition through their hull, their movements and their behavior. It's brilliantly executed and makes the world far more immersive. And clearly, the Ark pose a serious threat to the Raiders. No surprise there, since they were originally, back when Ark Raiders was still planned as a pure PvE co-op title, the only threat to the players. But how much has that changed since the game evolved into a shooter with PvP elements?
We were previously a PvE game, and when we made the move to PvPvE, we actually did quite an elaborate and meaningful decision of keeping the PvE as much as it were before. So we really try to keep the enemies quite threatening and keep the behaviors quite complex. So we want to balance it in a way where you know that you both have to keep your eye out for players, but also for the AI. But then obviously a lot of extraction shooters actually try to bring the PvE a little bit back, because that can take away from PvP. I know a lot of competitive players can get a little bit sad if they're third-partied by a Rocketeer, which makes sense, but it is also part of what we have decided to do. We want the game to really feel like you are there and you're fighting other raiders, but the main threat is Ark, and we want to keep it that way.
Having a strong PvE element is what gives context to the PvP. Otherwise, you just sort of end up with a deathmatch with a little bit of extra stuff happening on the side. So it's a very conscious effort with the mechanics we've added, the way enemies are designed, the way they're placed in the levels, and the other activities and things that happen throughout the round give texture to the PvP and make the player have to make choices and considerations while they engage in it. So I think that's kind of core to the experience, and we've really just tried to pursue that as much as possible.
But if the Ark already represent humanity's greatest threat, doesn't it make more sense to play the game as pure PvE? Am I forced by Ark Raiders to fight against other players?
You will never have to be forced through our questing to do PvP. One of the things, yeah, thank you. One of the things that we really wanted to save is the fantasy of the game, which is you are the last of humanity living on Earth, and there are killer robots out to get you all. And if we start telling people that the thing that we want you to do is to go out and kill the last remainder of humanity, that would kind of break a little bit with the fantasy that we want to go for. And we also want to keep the game fun for people who like PvE, who those initial fans that we got from the game before. Like me, myself, I am a kind of pacifist in the game. I like playing PvE a lot, and I also like hopping in and trying to save people that are being slaughtered by other players. So
far, everything sounds fantastic. I love that the devs focus on maintaining immersion, and those seemingly small but essential details make a huge difference. But what happens when the community starts complaining? Many games have fallen apart because developers strayed from their original vision the moment a small but loud group began demanding changes.
Listening to community is critically important, but it's how you take what you get from them and what you do with it. So on the dev team, or certainly within design, of course, we practice intent-based development, and it's just as important to understand what the intent behind what your community is telling you is. They will never have the context you have as a developer with what they're trying to tell you, but they will always be pointing to something that's true for them. And so if you can understand the intent behind what they're saying, it becomes far easier to blend that with the intent of what you're developing and find something that ideally works as a middle ground. So even if someone may say, I really hate PvP, or you should have left it as PvE, or don't nerf the snap hook, there's intent on both sides. And ideally, you end up with something that's stronger as a result of taking those two halves and making it into something.
That's a great answer, and once again proves that the studio truly believes in its vision. But games with PvP elements always come with certain risks. Cheaters are a constant problem in online gaming. The question is whether Embark can keep this plague under control and protect Ark Raiders well enough to ensure a fair experience for everyone.
Of course, it's a very severe problem that we're aware of, so we have a great team who's putting this stuff together. We use a combination of our own things as well as existing software for this, our own heuristics, things like that. So it is an active part of our development, and it has been for a long time. And obviously with the finals being live, we have a lot of experience cleaning up that. So I think we're in a very good state with the finals today, and that should ideally carry over to what we have with Arc Raiders.
From a technical standpoint, everything seems to be in place to make Arc Raiders fun for a long time after launch. But what about new content? Is there a post-launch roadmap? And what can we expect in terms of new additions to keep the game fresh?
We're not at this stage going to discuss exact roadmap details. That stuff can quickly spiral into promises that can go unfulfilled if things change. But of course, adding things over time like new maps and extending quest lines and introducing new enemies and new weapons and things like that. So, you know, we'll have some stuff lined up post-launch and for a little bit after, but then it will be based on what we see out of the launch and then going thereafter to kind of start dropping the content that we need to. I think internally, for a very long time, we referred to this as a 10-year game. So that is the ambition that we're aiming for, and that kind of dictates the type and quantity of content that we want to put into it.
10 years of live service for Arc Raiders would be an absolute dream, an incredibly ambitious goal. It does seem, however, that Embark started planning and developing post-launch content early on. Community events in particular could become very exciting in a PvPvE setting.
So in Tech Test 1, there was a community event that required a lot of cooperation in order to open up some bunker doors. Is this type of thing something that we can expect in Arc Raiders as something that's very regular for players to experience, part of the live service?
Yes.
I was hoping for a slightly longer sentence.
Yes, probably.
But what about the Endgame? The Expedition Project, Arc Raiders' prestige system, has already been revealed, but is there even more to do beyond that?
I think you can see some of the elements today. So if you've played, you might have seen the things we call map conditions, which kind of really either minorly or majorly change up the gameplay in those. So I think that's one element that we're going to really lean into is you could take a familiar setting, a map you're already comfortable playing, and we really apply a big twist to how it plays out. And certainly the end game play has to evolve with the game as we go. And you know, we even as early as a year ago began talking about what the next evolution was. So it's something that's on our radar for sure. So once the game's live, we see how players are engaging with the game loop we have, the game mode we have. I think it's only natural to look toward the future into how we evolve that experience, because I can't say for sure that the game will subsist forever on the format we have today. But I think if you've taken a moment in any one of these sessions and stood still and listened to the low soundtrack and the wind and the trees and looked on these environments, that this game can hold so much more than just the game mode we have today, however compelling it might be. And I think it'd almost be a waste of what we've built to keep it there.
That sounds extremely exciting. Assuming it achieves the success it deserves, Arc Raiders seems to have endless possibilities ahead. Embark has big plans for the IP, and as design director Virgil said so well, this world offers room for many stories, game modes, or even entirely new games. The direction Arc Raiders will take in the future is far from set in stone. Those were some incredible insights from the three devs about the game's development and its future. What did you like best, or what gave you the most confidence, or perhaps didn't convince you at all? Let me know in the comments below. But I did promise you one last story, so here it is, how one of our favorite Arc Raiders characters came to life. This is the story of Scrappy.
You've played the game, and even if you hadn't, the workshop, I'm sure most people are familiar with that, has all these workstations and workbenches that would serve your sort of crafting loop and all these things. And you really want to try and attempt and make these things aspirational and fun and engaging beyond just being tools on a bench. So one of the designers came up with this idea of the sort of resource machine to add some kind of charm, because charm is a sort of guiding light that we apply to the game through and through, especially in the visuals and the experiential things, because it is it's a dark premise behind this game, but we want to make a kind of an inviting presentation of it. So charm is absolutely crucial in there. So they suggested that can we explore this resource machine to have some kind of personality? So like, can we make it a little bot or something? But we're pressed for time, especially for, I think it was TT2?
Yeah.
It was TT2. So we wanted to do something, and of course the first thought goes to, can we just, use a cat? Everyone loves cats. They're adorable. But we didn't have time. Making a cat, getting it to be animated, having it function, all the work that goes behind it is an incredible undertaking. So we sat there in silence thinking about it, and one guy said, we do have a rooster. So a guy on the 3D team made a little rooster as a sort of background thing, running around in the cantina, just standing there. And we figured, let's try that and see how it works. So there's a whole story behind the rooster itself. It's based off of a real rooster that this 3D guy's parents owned. It's called Håkan. So he'd taken pictures of it, made a very simple mesh around it. It has a very simple little rig that can animate, and that's what we saw. And honestly, it was a gamble. But we kind of gambled on going, there's a whole rooster meta in here somewhere. We'll see. People are going to like it. And yeah, lo and behold, it became a whole thing. So the next step was to make high-def Håkan, and that's what we're seeing in Server Slam now.
I hope you enjoyed the video. That's it from me for now. Have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one.